Hello and welcome.
We are so happy to have you here with us today.
It is truly a pleasure to share this time with you.
Welcome, everyone. We have an incredibly practical deep dive for you today.
We really do.
Our mission is very clear. We are looking at how you can stop wasting time.
Exactly.
We want to figure out how to beat distractions completely. And, most importantly, we want to uncover how you can stay perfectly focused on your biggest goals.
Right, because focus is everything. And to solve this puzzle, we pulled together a really diverse stack of sources for today's discussion.
We really went everywhere for this one.
We did. We're pulling from the latest cognitive science research on how the brain processes attention.
Which is super fascinating.
It is. We also have notes detailing the business principles of top entrepreneurs. We are focusing heavily on Dan Martell for that.
Oh, I love his stuff.
Same. We're also diving deep into Cal Newport's famous concepts around deep work. Right. And we're going to explore some really interesting psychological phenomena, including something called the Zeigarnik effect.
Which completely changes how we view unfinished tasks. I cannot wait to get into that part.
Yeah, it is a game changer.
But, we have to start with the hook here, because we all struggle with procrastination.
Every single one of us.
Every single one of us puts things off, and I think it feels like a personal failure when you cannot focus. You sit down at your desk, you open your laptop, and 5 minutes later, you are just scrolling through your phone.
Oh, I have been there so many times.
Right. You look at the clock and you realize you just wasted half an hour. You probably feel terrible about it. You might even call yourself lazy.
But here is the truth. You are not lazy.
Exactly.
Your brain is doing exactly what it is wired to do. It is a biological and psychological mechanism. Our brains follow very specific, predictable patterns.
And today, we're going to teach you how to hack that wiring.
Yes. Because when you understand those patterns, you stop fighting yourself. You can actually set up systems that make focus automatic.
That is the dream. So, before we can fix the problem, we need to look at the true cost of our distractions.
We really do. We have to understand the environment we're operating in first.
Right. Because when people think about distractions, they usually point straight to their digital environment.
Oh, absolutely. They point to the constant digital overload we deal with every single day.
It's the easiest target. I mean, we all blame our phones.
We do.
We blame the notifications, the ringing, the buzzing. The screen is, it is always lighting up.
And the research actually backs up that feeling of overwhelm. We have some statistics from a research group called Willingness.
Okay, what did they find?
Their data shows the average smartphone user receives 46 notifications every single day.
Wow, 46.
Yeah. That means your phone is actively trying to interrupt your focus 46 separate times from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
At first glance, 46 interruptions doesn't sound completely catastrophic.
Right, because they are so fast.
Exactly. You hear a ping, you glance at the screen for 2 seconds, you put it face down, and you just return to your computer.
That is what everyone thinks.
The common belief is that a distraction only costs you the 2 seconds it takes to look away.
But that assumption is exactly why people feel so behind on their work. A distraction does not cost you 2 seconds. The true cost of a single ping is actually staggering.
So what is the real cost?
Well, according to cognitive research, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully recover your focus after an interruption.
Wait, really? 23 minutes? Just from checking a text?
Yes, 23 whole minutes. Let's break down the mechanics of why that happens.
Please do, because that sounds crazy.
So the brain doesn't just snap back to its previous state. When you are deeply focused on, say, writing a report or solving a problem, your brain holds a massive amount of temporary information in its working memory. It is like having a dozen files open on your mental desktop. You know exactly where everything is.
Right, you were in the zone.
Exactly. But when you look away to read a text message, your brain has to clear that mental desktop to process the new information.
Because the text message demands your attention.
Right. And then when you turn back to your report, those dozen files are gone.
Oh, wow.
Your brain has to slowly pull them all back out of the filing cabinet. It has to reconstruct the entire thought process.
And that reconstruction is what takes 23 minutes.
You got it.
So, if you get distracted just 3 times in an hour, you are never actually reaching a state of deep focus.
Never. You are constantly in a state of mental recovery.
That is exhausting just to think about.
It is. And the data shows the consequences of this constant recovery phase. When people are interrupted, their error rates double.
Double.
Yes, they make twice as many mistakes. They forget details. And because they spend so much time just trying to get back into the zone, the average worker is limited to less than 3 hours of truly productive work a day.
Less than 3 hours out of an 8-hour workday.
Exactly. The rest of the day is completely consumed by distractions and the long recovery periods that follow them.
Wow. I mean, 3 productive hours out of 8 is a massive loss of human potential.
It really is.
Mm.
And the sources point out it gets even more insidious.
How could it be worse?
Well, a study published in PLOS One found that you don't even need to pick up your phone to suffer this cognitive penalty.
Wait, I don't even have to look at it.
Nope. The study revealed that just hearing the notification sound impairs your cognitive task performance.
Just hearing it.
Just hearing it. Imagine your phone is sitting on a table all the way across the room. You're at your desk. The phone pings. Even if you do not get up, even if you do not look at it, your brain registers the sound.
Right, because the brain is like a prediction machine.
Exactly. The moment it hears the ping, it launches a background process. It starts wondering, who is texting me? Is it my boss?
Is it my spouse? Is it an emergency?
Is it just a spam email?
Right. And that background process uses up valuable cognitive resources. So your brain is dedicating processing power to the unsolved mystery of the notification.
Yes. And this lowers your performance on whatever task is directly in front of you. Your focus is split without you even moving a single muscle.
Okay, so we have established that external distractions are incredibly destructive. But there is a major plot twist in the research here.
There is.
Entrepreneur Dan Martell, referencing the work of Nir Eyal in the book Indistractable, argues that we are completely misdiagnosing the root of the problem.
This is such a big point.
Right. They claim that most distractions do not actually originate from our phones. The phone is just a tool. The real culprits are internal triggers.
Internal triggers. This changes the entire conversation around focus.
It really does. I mean, I always blamed my phone for my lack of focus.
We all do. We treat the phone like an attacker that forces its way into our attention.
But the psychological reality is quite different, isn't it?
It is. Very often, we are actively looking for an interruption.
Wait, we want to be distracted.
Yes. We use distractions as a coping mechanism. We use them to escape uncomfortable feelings that are bubbling up inside of us.
So you are saying I actually want to be distracted because I am trying to escape feeling bored or stressed.
Exactly. This concept really flips the script. We are using our screens as emotional pacifiers.
Wow, an emotional pacifier.
Think about it. If we look at the specific uncomfortable feelings, it makes perfect sense. Think about sitting down to do your taxes.
Ugh, the worst.
Right. Or preparing a really difficult presentation for work. The immediate feeling isn't usually motivation. The immediate feeling is boredom.
Or fear,
Yeah.
because you are worried the presentation will be bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or it could be fatigue. You're just mentally tired and the task requires a lot of effort.
Or even uncertainty. You simply do not know what the very first step of the project should be.
Right. And the brain experiences these feelings, boredom, fear, fatigue, uncertainty. It experiences them as a form of pain.
And the brain is hardwired to move away from pain.
Yes. So the brain looks for the nearest exit. It looks for a quick hit of dopamine to soothe the discomfort.
And the easiest, most accessible exit is sitting right in our pocket.
Exactly. We reach for the phone to scroll through a social media feed because it instantly numbs the feeling of uncertainty or boredom.
We soothe ourselves with the illusion of activity. Because scrolling feels like doing something. It makes us feel busy.
But it is purely an escape from the internal trigger.
There is a quote from Jeff Bezos that summarizes the root of this anxiety perfectly.
Oh, I love this quote.
He noted that stress primarily comes from not taking action over something you have control over.
That is so true. Let's apply that Bezos quote to this cycle. The stress isn't coming from the heavy workload itself. The stress is coming from the fact that we are avoiding the work.
Right. We feel a little bit of anxiety about a task, so we escape into a distraction to feel better.
But while we are distracted, the task just sits there undone.
And the deadline gets closer.
And the anxiety grows larger. It creates a self-reinforcing loop of anxiety and distraction.
Which ties directly into a fascinating psychological concept called the Zeigarnik effect.
Yes, the Zeigarnik effect explains exactly why ignoring the work creates so much internal stress.
The history behind this is brilliant. So in the 1920s, there was a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik.
Right.
She was sitting in a busy cafe in Vienna, and she was observing the waiters as they moved around the restaurant.
Go ahead.
These waiters were dealing with large parties of people. They were taking massive, complex food and drink orders, but they weren't writing anything down.
Wow.
They just held it all in their heads, brought the food perfectly, and delivered the correct bills.
It looked like they had superhuman memory.
Exactly. But Zygarnik noticed something strange happened the moment the customers paid their bill and left the cafe.
What happened?
If she approached a waiter just 5 minutes after a table paid and asked them what that table had ordered, the waiter had absolutely no idea.
The memory was just gone.
Completely gone. Once the transaction was finished, the brain deleted the file. But while the order was unpaid, the brain held on to every single detail with intense grip.
That is amazing.
Zygarnik took this observation into the laboratory and proved it. The human brain remembers unfinished tasks far better and far more vividly than finished ones.
And we call these unfinished tasks open loops.
Open loops, right.
So in the context of our daily lives, these open loops act like background applications draining a computer's battery.
That is a great analogy.
Every time you read an email and say, oh, I'll reply to that later, you create an open loop.
Every time you start organizing a spreadsheet and stop halfway through, you create an open loop.
Every time you realize you need to buy groceries but don't write it down, you create another open loop.
And the brain is desperate for closure. It hates loose ends, so it creates a constant mental itch.
Yes. The brain repeatedly sends you little subconscious reminders. It taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, don't forget about that email. Hey, remember the spreadsheet.
And this creates massive mental clutter.
Huge mental clutter. And this prevents any real relaxation. This is why people can sit on their couch at 8 p.m. watching television, completely exhausted, but they still feel a low-level hum of anxiety.
Because their brain is frantically juggling all the open loops from the workday.
Exactly. The Zygarnik effect guarantees that your unfinished work will continue to haunt you and drain your energy long after you leave the office.
So if these open loops are constantly running in the background, draining our energy, it explains why we hit a wall so early in the day.
It really does.
Our attention literally runs out of fuel. Which begs the question, what exactly is that fuel biologically? We need to look closely at the science of focus and mental exhaustion.
We do. We have to shift our perspective here because we tend to treat attention like it is an infinite resource.
Right. We assume that if we just try harder, we can pay attention to anything for as long as we want.
But early cognitive science established that attention is a physical, limited biological resource. It has a strict upper boundary.
Wilhelm Wundt was one of the pioneers in this field.
He was.
He studied the capacity of human attention and found the limit is incredibly small. Historically, his research showed that a human being can only hold about 3 to 6 items in their clear, conscious focus at any one given time.
Only 3 to 6. If you think about your working memory as a handful of physical slots, you only have about 4 or 5 slots available.
Wow.
If you are holding a phone number in your head, that takes a slot. If you are thinking about what to make for dinner, that takes another slot.
If you are listening to us right now, that takes a third.
Your capacity maxes out instantly.
Wundt's finding really puts our modern work environments into perspective.
It really does.
Because if you have 5 browser tabs open, a chat window blinking, and a phone buzzing on your desk, your cognitive slots are completely filled with noise before you have even looked at your actual work.
Exactly. You have zero capacity left for the complex task you're actually supposed to be doing.
William James, another foundational figure in psychology, provided a definition of attention that explains why those slots are so limited.
Yes, his definition is so important. He described attention as the mind taking clear and vivid possession of one object or train of thought.
But the crucial part of his definition is the second half.
Right.
He said that to possess one object, the mind must actively withdraw from others.
That concept of withdrawing is the key. Paying attention is not just shining a spotlight on what you want to see. It is actively pulling a heavy curtain over everything else.
You have to suppress the background noise. You have to ignore the movement in the room.
You have to silence the internal thoughts about dinner.
And that suppression requires a tremendous amount of biological energy.
It does.
Yeah.
And this completely destroys the modern myth of multitasking.
People love to claim they are great multitaskers.
Oh, everyone puts it on their resume. They think they can watch a training video while answering emails and participating in a conference call.
But the biological reality is that divided attention does not exist.
It doesn't. The brain cannot process 2 high-level cognitive tasks simultaneously.
So when you try to multitask, You are not actually doing things at the same time. You are rapid task switching.
Rapid task switching, exactly. You are throwing one item out of the cognitive slot, pulling a new one in, processing it for 2 seconds, throwing it out, and pulling the first one back in.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. This rapid switching burns an immense amount of glucose in the brain. It plummets your performance quality, spikes your error rate, and slows everything down.
And as the brain burns through its energy by switching tasks or suppressing distractions, it encounters another major drain, which is decision fatigue.
Yes, decision fatigue is huge.
Because every single choice you make requires cognitive effort.
The scientific term for this depletion of energy is ego depletion. When you make too many choices, your mental battery drains.
Which makes it harder to control your thoughts and impulses later on.
Exactly. And the sources outline a brilliant concept here called the effort-accuracy trade-off.
I found this part so interesting.
It is great. When we face a decision, our brain calculates how much effort to invest based on the required accuracy of the outcome.
Okay, let's look at a high-stakes scenario.
Sure.
You are buying a new car. Cars are incredibly expensive. A mistake here costs you thousands of dollars and years of mechanical headaches.
Right. Because the consequences of a bad choice are severe, the accuracy requirement is very high.
Therefore, your brain is willing to invest a massive amount of effort. You spend weeks researching safety ratings, comparing financing rates, doing test drives, and negotiating with dealers.
You gladly spend the cognitive energy because the situation demands it.
Now let's look at the opposite end of the spectrum. You are standing in the grocery store aisle looking at candy bars.
Okay.
You have a choice between a Snickers and a Twix. The cost is $2. Even if you make the absolute worst choice possible and pick a candy bar you don't really like, the consequence is just eating a slightly disappointing piece of chocolate.
So the accuracy requirement is basically zero.
Exactly. Therefore, the brain should invest zero effort. You should just grab one and move on.
But the tragedy of the modern worker is that they routinely violate this effort-accuracy trade-off.
They really do. People waste their precious, limited cognitive energy agonizing over candy bar decisions.
They will spend 20 solid minutes scrolling through a streaming service trying to pick the perfect movie.
They will spend 45 minutes deciding what outfit to wear to a casual dinner.
Or they will debate endlessly over which font to use in an internal memo that no one will really read.
They are spending car-buying energy on candy bar decisions.
Yes. And because our daily pool of cognitive energy is strictly limited, overthinking the small stuff means you arrive at your desk with an empty tank.
So when the boss asks for a complex strategic decision, a true car decision, you have nothing left to give. You take the path of least resistance.
And when we push our cognitive battery to absolute zero, we trigger a specific biological state known as directed attention fatigue, or DAF.
DAF. This goes back to the concept of the brain having to actively suppress distractions.
Right. The mechanisms in the brain that do this suppressing are called inhibitory mechanisms. We can think of them as the brain's brakes.
If you are reading a dense financial report, your brain is constantly pumping the brakes.
It is braking against the urge to look out the window. It is braking against the urge to check your phone.
It is braking against the sound of your coworker typing.
And overusing those brakes causes them to wear out.
Directed attention fatigue is the temporary failure of your inhibitory mechanisms. You literally lose the ability to block out the world around you. You know, I love the analogy here. Think of your attention like a bouncer standing at the door of an exclusive nightclub.
Yes, the bouncer analogy is perfect.
Inside the club is your deep focus. Outside the club is a massive crowd of terrible distractions trying to get in.
And the bouncer's job is to stand at the velvet rope and push those distractions away.
For the first few hours of the day, the bouncer is strong. He easily blocks the social media notifications and the office gossip.
But after hours of constant pushing, the bouncer gets exhausted, his arms are tired, his legs are weak.
So directed attention fatigue is the moment the bouncer simply gives up.
He just drops the velvet rope, walks away, and lets the entire chaotic crowd rush into the club.
And once that bouncer leaves, the symptoms of DAF hit you hard. You don't just feel a little tired, your entire personality shifts.
It really does. You become incredibly cranky and irritable. You become impatient with your family.
You get forgetful. You might drop your keys or forget why you walked into a room.
You miss basic social cues in conversations. You act purely on impulse, reaching for junk food or mindlessly buying things online.
And the clinical research on directed attention fatigue is staggering.
It is. When scientists study the brains of people suffering from severe DAF, They see functional impairments in the right prefrontal cortex.
Which is the exact same area of the brain affected by ADHD.
Yes. The symptoms of acute mental fatigue practically mirror the clinical symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Your environment and your habits are temporarily mimicking a neurological condition.
That is so scary. If our mental bouncer gets exhausted so predictably and our brakes fail so easily, it exposes a massive flaw in how most people try to work.
It does. We are all trying to rely on willpower.
We tell ourselves, I will just try harder to stay focused today.
But willpower is exactly what runs out. You cannot use willpower to fight a biological failure.
You need a system that protects your focus when your willpower inevitably collapses.
Which leads us directly into strategies for reclaiming control over our environment.
Right. If we cannot trust our internal brakes, we must build external barriers.
And the most effective barrier discussed in our sources is the implementation of time boxing, which is fundamentally different from the more common practice of time blocking.
Okay, let's clearly separate these two concepts because people mix them up constantly.
Yeah, you do.
Time blocking is a scheduling method. It involves assigning a specific task to a block of time on your calendar. You might look at your Tuesday afternoon and write down 1:00 p.m. to 3:00 p.m. work on marketing presentation.
You are dedicating that space to that task. Time blocking is certainly better than having no plan at all, but it lacks a crucial element of pressure.
It reserves the time, but it doesn't enforce urgency.
Exactly. Time boxing, on the other hand, imposes a strict non-negotiable duration limit on the work.
You don't just say you will work on the presentation between 1 and 3. You say, I am giving this presentation exactly 45 minutes. When the timer goes off, I stop completely, whether it is finished or not.
You are building a hard box around the task. And the data proving the superiority of time boxing is remarkable.
Tell us about the MIT study.
So we can look at a highly detailed study conducted by the MIT Human Dynamics Lab. They put tracking sensors on software engineers to monitor their work habits and focus levels throughout the day.
Okay.
The MIT researchers divided the engineers based on their time management strategies. The group that relied only on traditional time blocking, simply putting tasks on their calendar without strict cutoffs, experienced an average of 17.3 task switches per hour.
17.3 times an hour. That means every 3.5 minutes they were breaking focus.
Yes, they were checking Slack, looking at emails, or glancing at their phones. Because they had a large open block of 2 hours to code, their brains felt no urgency.
The bouncer got bored and let distractions wander in.
Exactly. But the results changed drastically for the group using strict time boxing. When engineers used a countdown timer and committed to a rigid stopping point, their task switches plummeted to 6.1 per hour.
Wow. They cut their distractions by almost 2/3.
Even more impressively, their recovery time, the time it took to get back into deep focus after one of those few distractions, drops from the standard 23 minutes down to under 6 minutes.
Because the box forces you to stay inside the context of the task. Your brain knows the clock is ticking, so it doesn't fully let go of the mental files.
The effectiveness of the time box is driven by a concept known as Parkinson's law. Dan Martell references this law frequently when discussing rapid growth and productivity.
Parkinson's law dictates that work expands to fill the time you give it.
Yes, we have all experienced Parkinson's law in our daily lives.
So absolutely. Imagine you have a messy garage. You decide you are going to clean it out this weekend. You give yourself all of Saturday and all of Sunday.
And because you gave the task 2 entire days, it will take 2 entire days.
Right. You will sort through old boxes slowly. You will take long breaks. You will get nostalgic looking at old photos.
The work expands to fill the massive 48-hour container you provided.
Now imagine a different scenario. Your in-laws just called.
Oh no.
They are arriving in exactly 2 hours, and they need to park their car in that messy garage.
Suddenly, the container shrinks to 120 minutes.
You do not look at old photos. You do not take long breaks. You make ruthless, high-speed decisions. You throw things in trash bags. You move boxes against the wall.
You magically clean the entire garage in 2 hours.
The actual mechanical work required to clean the garage didn't change. The only thing that changed was the size of the time box.
When you use a countdown timer on your daily tasks, you are artificially creating the in-laws are arriving urgency. You force your brain to stop overthinking and start executing.
No, wait. If I put work on project in my calendar, isn't that enough? Why do I need a strict timer that cuts me off? I feel like if I time box for 45 minutes and ignore everything else, my boss is going to think I'm ignoring them. What if I miss an urgent message?
That is a very common anxiety, but it misses the point of the system. The time box isn't an 8-hour disappearance, it is a focused sprint.
Okay.
When the 45-minute box ends, you have a scheduled 10-minute box specifically dedicated to checking messages and responding to your boss. You are actually more reliable because you are checking messages purposefully rather than reacting to them chaotically.
That makes a lot of sense.
Another pushback people have is about self-discipline. They think, I don't need an actual timer. I can just look at the clock and tell myself to stop when it's time.
But this fundamentally misunderstands how our brains handle deep engagement. We have to look at the neurological mechanics of stopping.
Yes. There is a specific region in the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC. The ACC acts as the brain's error detection system. It monitors our actions for conflict.
Okay.
When we are deeply engaged in a complex, challenging task, a lot of cognitive momentum is built up. If you suddenly try to stop that task halfway through just because the clock hit a certain number, the anterior cingulate cortex registers that sudden halt as a massive cognitive error.
So it feels wrong to stop.
Yes. The brain releases stress hormones. It actively fights your decision to pull away. It whispers, just 5 more minutes. We're almost at a breakthrough.
Wow. So if you rely on your own willpower to stop, the anterior cingulate cortex will defeat you every single time.
Every single time, you will blow right past your deadline. This is why the experts insist on using system-level constraints. You cannot trust yourself. You must outsource the discipline to the machine.
For knowledge workers using computers, this means utilizing OS-level timers.
Yes. These are hardcore software programs built into the operating system. When the 45-minute timer hits 0, the software aggressively intervenes.
It doesn't just play a gentle chime. It physically closes your applications. It locks your screen. It forces you to stop typing.
It is a ruthless system, but it is necessary. Our sources explicitly warn against using simple browser extensions.
Because if you use a Chrome extension that pops up a little message saying, time to take a break, you will just click the button that says snooze for 5 minutes.
You will bypass the constraint effortlessly. You need a hard mechanical stop to enforce the box and train your brain to respect the boundary.
It is also vital to understand that time boxes are not one size fits all.
Right. The famous Pomodoro technique popularized the 25-minute timer. While 25 minutes is great for getting through a backlog of emails, it is completely arbitrary for deep cognitive work.
The MIT study we mentioned earlier looked at optimal box sizes for different types of labor. They found that the optimal time box for debugging complex computer code was quite short, peaking at around 18 minutes before fatigue set in.
But for creative writing, the optimal focus box expanded to 42 minutes.
No, you have to experiment with the duration. You must find the precise box size that pushes you to work fast, but ends right before the bouncer at the nightclub gets exhausted.
Now that we have established a rigid architectural system to protect our time, we arrive at the most critical question of the entire deep dive.
You have drawn the boxes on your calendar. You have your OS-level timers ready. What exactly are you supposed to put inside those boxes?
How do you ensure you are doing the right kind of work?
This brings us to the core philosophy of Cal Newport and his concept of the deep work lifestyle.
Newport completely redefines how we evaluate our daily tasks. He separates everything we do into 2 strictly divided categories: deep work and shallow work.
Let's define these clearly. Deep work consists of professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration.
These activities push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit. They require intense mental strain.
And most importantly, deep work creates massive new value in the world, improves your skills, and is incredibly difficult for a competitor or an AI to replicate.
Shallow work is the dark twin of deep work.
So what is shallow work?
Shallow work involves logistical, administrative, and easy tasks: answering standard emails, proving calendar invites, filling out expense reports, or moving data from one spreadsheet to another.
These tasks do not require intense focus. They are often performed while distracted, and they create almost zero new value. Anyone can be trained to do them in a day.
But the modern workplace is completely addicted to shallow work because it feels productive.
Organizing your email inbox gives you a quick hit of dopamine. You moved 10 emails into a folder, so you feel like you accomplished something, but you didn't create anything.
So shallow work is like meticulously rearranging the deck chairs on a ship. It looks nice, but it doesn't move the ship forward.
Deep work is getting down into the engine room and actually building the engine, writing the code, drafting the legal brief, designing the architecture that is the depth work that builds careers and moves humanity forward.
To help people escape the trap of shallow work, Cal Newport outlined 4 distinct philosophies for integrating deep work into your life.
You have to choose the philosophy that matches your specific career and life circumstances.
Right. The first is the monastic philosophy.
The monastic philosophy is exactly what it sounds like. You live like a monk. You isolate yourself completely from the shallow world.
You delete your social media, you remove your email address from your website, and you retreat to a cabin in the woods to work.
This is highly effective for a science fiction novelist or a theoretical physicist. But if you try the monastic approach as a middle manager at a marketing firm, you will be fired on the first day.
Yeah, it is too extreme for most. For those who need to remain connected, there's the bimodal philosophy.
Okay, what is bimodal?
This approach divides your time into 2 distinct modes. You dedicate large, clearly defined chunks of time, say 3 days a week or 2 full weeks a month, entirely to monastic deep work. You are unreachable during those times.
Then, for the remainder of the week or month, you return to the normal world and blast through all your shallow work, meetings, and emails.
Right. But if the bimodal approach is still too disruptive to your schedule, you look at the third option, the rhythmic philosophy.
This is the most common and practical method for regular professionals. The rhythmic approach turns deep work into a relentless daily habit.
You block out the exact same time every single day. For example, every morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. You do not check email, you do not look at your phone. You just do 2 hours of pure deep work.
By making it a daily rhythm, you remove the decision fatigue of figuring out when to focus.
Finally, there's the journalistic philosophy. This approach requires you to instantly shift into a state of deep work whenever a pocket of free time opens up in your schedule.
If a meeting ends 30 minutes early, a journalist-style worker immediately opens their laptop and drops into intense focus for 29 minutes.
The sources offer a strong warning about the journalistic philosophy, though.
Yeah, it requires a tremendous amount of cognitive skill and practice. Beginners cannot use this method.
Because if a beginner has 30 free minutes, it takes them 20 minutes just to figure out what they want to work on, and by the time they start, the window is closed.
You must master the rhythmic approach before you attempt the journalistic approach.
This relentless prioritization of high-value tasks aligns perfectly with Dan Martell's business framework. He translates the concept of deep work into the language of signal versus noise.
He leans heavily on the Pareto principle, commonly known as the 80-20 rule.
The 80-20 rule states that 80% of your desired results will come from just 20% of your actions.
That tiny 20% of actions is the signal. It is the pure, concentrated output that actually moves the needle on your goals.
Everything else, the other 80% of your day, is just noise. It is the endless meetings that should have been an email. It is the office politics. It is the scrolling.
We have a brilliant case study in the sources from a tech company called Palantir. They are renowned in Silicon Valley for having ruthlessly effective employees.
They are. Palantir specifically hires and trains for a mindset that naturally filters out the noise. They cultivate 2 specific traits in their top performers: high agency and a bias toward action.
Let's explore what high agency actually looks like on a daily basis.
A low agency employee hits a roadblock. Maybe a software tool breaks and they stop. They send an email to IT, they sit back in their chair and they say, well, I can't do my work until they fix it.
They become a victim of their environment. They get swallowed by the noise.
A high agency employee refuses to be stuck. If the tool breaks, they figure out a workaround. They find a different tool. They call someone in another department.
They possess a bias toward action. They do not wait for perfect instructions from management. They figure out the core mission, the signal, and they attack it relentlessly.
The sources describe this as maintaining a low ego and a high ops tempo.
Low ego means you don't care if a task is technically beneath your pay grade. If it needs to be done to achieve the goal, you do it.
High ops tempo means operating with speed and urgency. You are moving too fast for distractions to catch you.
But operating at a high tempo requires you to control the environment around you, particularly your digital tools. If your phone and computer are constantly interrupting you, your tempo collapses.
Which requires adopting what Cal Newport calls the craftsman approach to digital tools.
Most people use the any benefit approach to their digital lives.
Yes, the any benefit approach. If an app or a social media platform offers even the slightest potential benefit, maybe you will see a funny meme, maybe you'll reconnect with an old friend from high school, you justify keeping the app on your phone.
You accept massive daily distraction in exchange for a tiny theoretical benefit.
The craftsman approach completely rejects this mindset. A craftsman evaluating a new tool like a woodworker looking at a new saw does not buy it just because it might be fun to use.
Right. They only bring the tool into the workshop if its positive impact on their core mission massively outweighs the negative costs of storing and maintaining it.
You have to treat your attention like that workshop. You should only use an app or a platform if it directly and substantially supports your biggest goals. If it doesn't, you throw the tool away.
Cal Newport suggests a radical experiment to test your tools. He advocates for a 30-day strict ban on all social media and optional digital platforms.
You delete the apps off your phone for 1 full month. You do not announce your departure online. You just disappear.
At the end of the 30 days, you ask yourself 2 questions. First, would the last 30 days have been notably better if I had been using these tools?
The second, did anyone actually care that I was gone?
The reality check is usually brutal. You realize that your absence didn't impact the world at all, and your life was remarkably more peaceful without the constant noise.
You discover which very few tools actually serve your signal, and you permanently discard the rest.
Okay, let's step back and look at the whole picture.
Let's do it.
Imagine you have built this perfect environment. You have your time blocked on the calendar. You have your hard 45-minute time box set with an OS-level timer.
You have deleted the distracting apps. You have identified your deep work for the day. Your desk is clear. Everything is ready.
But then you just sit there. You stare at the blinking cursor on the blank screen. Starting the work is still incredibly difficult. How do we overcome that massive initial friction?
This is the invisible wall that defeats so many people. Even with perfect preparation, the psychological weight of beginning a hard task is immense.
So how do we start?
To break through this wall, Dan Martell provides a highly effective analogy comparing human motivation to the gears of a manual transmission car.
If you have ever driven a stick-shift car, you understand this physical reality. When the car is completely stopped, getting the massive, heavy vehicle to start rolling forward requires a tremendous amount of mechanical force.
You have to push the clutch in, ease it out perfectly, you get lots of gas, the engine revs loudly, the car shakes and shudders.
Getting into first gear is a clumsy, friction-filled, difficult process.
But once the car is rolling, the physics change entirely. Shifting from first gear into second gear takes a fraction of the effort. The car is already carrying momentum.
By the time you are on the highway, shifting from 4th gear into 5th gear is completely effortless. You can do it with 2 fingers. You barely even notice the transition.
The fatal mistake we make with our work is waiting until we feel like we are in 5th gear before we try to start.
We wait for inspiration. We wait for perfect motivation.
But motivation is an illusion. Motivation comes after you start, not before. You do not need to feel good to get into first gear. You just need to grind the gears and force the car to move an inch.
As Martell says, you have to feel the feelings, but fly the plane.
You might feel terrified of the blank page. You might feel exhausted. Acknowledge those feelings, let them exist, but put your hands on the keyboard and fly the plane anyway.
And we can actually weaponize the psychology we discussed earlier to help us get into first gear. We can hack the Zeigarnik effect.
Remember, the Zeigarnik effect proves that the brain hates open loops. It obsesses over unfinished tasks.
So the secret to starting is to deliberately create an open loop as quickly and painlessly as possible.
You tell your brain a lie. You say, I am not going to write this whole report today. I am only going to work for exactly 5 minutes, and then I will stop.
5 minutes is such a ridiculously small amount of time that the brain doesn't trigger its massive resistance. The bouncer at the door doesn't care about a 5-minute task.
So you sit down, you open the document, and you type a single sentence.
The trap is sprung. The moment you type that first sentence, you have opened the loop. The task is now officially unfinished.
The Zeigarnik effect kicks in. Your brain suddenly feels an intense mental itch. It looks at the sentence and thinks, well, we can't just leave it like that. We have to finish the paragraph.
The momentum takes over. Getting into second gear pulls you forward. It actually becomes psychologically harder to stop than to keep going.
To make that first 5 minutes even easier, the sources recommend focusing entirely on the MINS.
The MINS. The acronym stands for the most important next step.
When people look at a massive project, like design a new website, the brain gets overwhelmed by the scale of the task and freezes.
You cannot execute a project. You can only execute physical actions. So you ignore the website entirely. You ask yourself, what is the most important next step?
Maybe the step is literally just open the wireframe software. That is a physical action you can complete in 10 seconds.
Once the software is open, the next step is draw a box for the header. You break the massive mountain down into pebbles, and you just pick up the first pebble.
This concept of momentum extends across multiple days. The sources provide a counterintuitive strategy for ending your workday that makes starting the next morning effortless.
It is called the cliffhanger technique. It involves deliberately violating the desire for closure.
When most people finish their workday, they try to find a clean stopping point. They finish the email, they complete the paragraph, they organize the folder.
You want to tie a neat bow on the project so they can feel a sense of completion.
But when you arrive the next morning, you are staring at a completely blank slate again. You have to build the momentum from zero. You have to grind into first gear all over again.
The cliffhanger technique says you should never end on a clean break. When your time box is up for the day, you should stop working right in the middle of a task.
If you are writing an article, you literally stop typing right in the middle of a sentence. Leave the thought hanging in midair.
It is exactly how television writers keep you addicted to a show. They end the episode right when the hero is hanging off a cliff. Your brain is desperate to know what happens next.
When you stop mid-sentence at 5 p.m., you plant an open loop deep in your subconscious.
When you sit down the next morning at 9 a.m., you don't have to think about what to do. The half-finished sentence is pulling at you like a magnet. You instantly type the rest of the sentence and boom, you are already in third gear. I love the cliffhanger idea, but I have to ask. If I deliberately stop mid-sentence, won't I just be stressed about it all night long? Won't that cliffhanger completely destroy my evening with my family?
That is a very precise and critical observation. If you just leave the sentence hanging and walk away, yes, your brain will torture you with anxiety all night. The brain is trying to make sure you don't forget the task.
Right, so how do we fix that?
To prevent this stress, you have to satisfy the brain's security system. You do this by writing down exactly what you will do next.
You take a piece of physical paper and you write, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I will finish the sentence about the marketing budget, and then I will draft the introduction.
By writing it down in a trusted system, you are safely storing the open loop.
You are sending a clear signal to your subconscious. You are saying, we have a concrete plan to resolve this. It is captured on paper. You do not need to remind me about it.
The brain accepts this plan. It stops ringing the alarm bell, allowing you to enjoy a peaceful evening while the momentum is safely preserved for the morning.
It is brilliant. You get the momentum of the cliffhanger without the anxiety of the open loop. But to make all of these tactics stick, the time boxing, the deep work, the cliffhangers, you have to move beyond just trying out life hacks. If you constantly feel like you are fighting your own nature, these habits will eventually fail.
They will feel like an exhausting chore. You have to change the foundation of your behavior. You have to change your identity.
Habits are fragile when they conflict with your self-image. If you believe deep down that you are a lazy, easily distracted person, your brain will constantly look for ways to prove that belief true.
To permanently adopt these deep work strategies, you must change your ego. You must shift your identity from someone who's trying to focus to someone who simply is a focused person.
The sources outline a very powerful linguistic tool for creating this identity shift. It involves the rigid use of I always and I never statements. These are identity claims. You draw a hard line in the sand regarding your behavior.
For example, instead of saying, I will try to prepare for my meetings today, you adopt the identity statement, I always prep for meetings.
Instead of saying, I should probably stay off my phone tonight, you declare, I never doom scroll after 6 p.m.
Think about the psychology of a truly healthy person. A professional athlete doesn't stand in front of a buffet and have an agonizing internal debate about whether to eat a donut or a salad.
They don't have to use willpower. Their core identity is, I fuel my body with healthy food. The decision is made before they even see the donut.
When you repeat your I always and I never statements, they eventually cement themselves as truth. You stop debating with yourself.
When the phone buzzes during a deep work block, you don't have to weigh the pros and cons of checking it. Your identity dictates the action. I am a focused person. Focused people do not break a time box. The friction disappears. We have spent a massive amount of time talking about intensity. We have talked about pushing the cognitive limits, building momentum, enforcing strict boxes, and doing deep, grueling work.
But we have to confront the physical reality of the human machine. You cannot run a high-performance engine at the red line forever. It will explode.
To sustain this level of focus over a career, you must master the exact opposite of focus. The true secret to long-term focus is learning how to rest perfectly.
This is the most counterintuitive part of the deep work philosophy. We glorify the idea of working 12-hour days. We celebrate the hustle culture of staying at the office until midnight.
But the biological data absolutely demolishes that approach. The human brain has a strict, hardwired physiological limit for true, deep work.
The cognitive science reveals that the absolute maximum capacity for intense, distraction-free concentration is about 4 hours per day.
That is the ceiling for an expert who has trained their focus for years. For a beginner, the limit might be as low as 1 hour.
The physical stressors of the brain, the myelin sheaths around the neurons, the neurotransmitters facilitating the connections, physically deplete after 4 hours of heavy strain.
If you push beyond that limit, you are no longer doing deep work. You are just exhausted, staring at a screen, making errors, and triggering the severe directed attention fatigue we analyzed earlier.
You are forcing the exhausted nightclub bouncer to stay on his feet.
To prevent this total cognitive breakdown, Cal Newport advocates for a system called fixed schedule productivity.
This system completely flips the standard approach to work. Normally, people look at their massive to-do list and they work until the list is done, which means they never stop working because the list never ends.
Fixed schedule productivity demands that you establish a rigid, unmovable end to your workday. You set your schedule, say, 8:30 a.m. to 5:00 p.m. No matter what is happening, no matter what is left on the list, you stop working at 5:00 p.m.
This artificial scarcity of time is a profound psychological weapon. When you know you absolutely must stop at 5:00 p.m., you suddenly realize you don't have time for the 80% of tasks that are just noise.
You don't have time to argue in a Slack channel. You don't have time for a pointless meeting. The fixed schedule forces you to ruthlessly eliminate the shallow work and focus entirely on the signal.
And when that hard boundary arrives at 5:00 p.m., you must execute a strict shutdown ritual. This isn't just closing your laptop and walking away. It is a highly specific, repeatable routine designed to sever the psychological connection to the office.
A shutdown ritual might look like this. At 4:50 p.m., you review your calendar for the next day. You capture any lingering open loops on a piece of paper using the cliffhanger strategy.
You close every single browser tab, you shut down the computer, and then you say a specific phrase out loud. Cal Newport literally says the words, "shutdown complete."
Saying it out loud sounds silly, but it acts as a neurological cue. It is a definitive signal to your brain that the professional day has ended. It gives your conscious mind permission to completely disengage.
And here's where the magic happens. When your conscious mind disengages, your unconscious mind goes to work.
The unconscious brain is incredibly powerful at pattern recognition and problem solving.
While you're cooking dinner or playing with your kids, your unconscious mind is quietly chewing on the complex problems you left at the office. You often wake up the next morning with a brilliant solution that you never could have forced while sitting at your desk.
But the unconscious mind can only do this work if the conscious mind is actually resting. And this brings us to a critical distinction in the research. Most people do not know how to rest.
They engage in activities they think are relaxing, but are actually causing further cognitive damage.
The sources introduced the concept from environmental psychology called attention restoration theory, or RT.
This theory categorizes the stimuli in our environment into two distinct types: hard fascination and soft fascination. Understanding the difference between these two is the key to recharging your mental battery.
Let's examine hard fascination first. Hard fascination involves stimuli that are loud, bright, fast-paced, and highly stimulating.
Watching an intense action movie with explosions and fast cuts is hard fascination. Playing a competitive, high-speed video game is hard fascination.
Rapidly scrolling through a social media feed where the topic changes every 2 seconds is hard fascination.
People do these things at night because they feel like an escape from work. And it is true, these activities effortlessly capture your attention. You don't have to try to watch the explosions.
But, and this is the crucial point, they do not restore your mental energy.
Even though you are entertained, your brain is still working incredibly hard to process the massive influx of visual and auditory data.
The bouncer at the nightclub is still awake, dealing with a loud, chaotic crowd. Hard fascination holds your attention, but it continues to drain the battery.
Soft fascination is the complete opposite. Soft fascination involves stimuli that are gentle, slow-moving, and aesthetically pleasing.
It is watching fluffy clouds slowly drift across the sky. It is listening to the quiet rustling of leaves in a tree. It is looking at the gentle movement of water in a stream.
Soft fascination engages what is called your involuntary attention. It gently holds your gaze without demanding any heavy cognitive processing.
Because the involuntary attention is softly engaged, your voluntary attention, the exhausted bouncer, finally gets a chance to sit down, take a deep breath, and heal.
Soft fascination allows the mind to wander safely. It allows you to reflect. It naturally restores the brain's inhibitory mechanisms, fixing the brakes so they work perfectly again tomorrow.
The scientific data on this is overwhelming. Spending time in natural green spaces is neurologically medicinal. A walk in the woods doesn't just make you feel nice, it physically replenishes your directed attention and reverses the clinical symptoms of mental fatigue.
This makes so much sense.
It changes everything about how I view my evenings. I used to think that watching a loud, fast-paced action movie after a hard day of work was relaxing because I wasn't thinking about spreadsheets. But in reality, I was just forcing my brain to run a marathon on a treadmill instead of on a track. Nature is like plugging my brain into a charger.
It creates a perfect sustainable cycle. You protect your boundaries with time boxes, you dive deeply into intense focus to create value. You acknowledge the friction of starting, but push through. And then, you shut down completely, allowing nature and rest to restore your capacity for the next day.
We have covered an immense amount of psychological ground today. Let's summarize the core mechanics so you can implement these strategies the minute you take your headphones off.
First, you have to recognize the reality of internal triggers. You are not just distracted by your phone. You are actively using it as an emotional pacifier to escape feeling bored, scared, or uncertain. Once you see the distraction as an escape, you can face the emotion directly.
Second, you must abandon weak time blocking and embrace rigid time boxing. Give your tasks a strict, non-negotiable time limit enforced by a machine, not your own willpower. This creates the urgency needed to stop the brain from wandering.
Third, respect the friction of first gear. Start incredibly small to build momentum. Tell yourself you will only do 5 minutes of work to open the loop.
And use the cliffhanger technique at the end of the day, leaving a sentence half finished and writing down the next step to make starting tomorrow morning completely effortless.
And finally, rigorously protect your downtime. Set a fixed schedule, execute a verbal shutdown ritual, and unplug your mind by stepping away from screens. Use the soft fascination of nature to physically rebuild the mental battery you drained during the day.
Remember, your attention is not just a tool for doing office work. Your attention is your most valuable resource in the entire world. It is the raw material, the fundamental currency that you use to build the reality of your life.
Every time you give it away to a random notification, you are giving away a piece of your potential.
You have the power to step out of the noisy, distracted chaos. You can build the systems that protect your focus, and you can start creating a life of clear, deep, and truly meaningful output.
Thank you so much for exploring these complex neurological and psychological concepts with us today. It is an honor to help you reclaim your time. We are always rooting for your ultimate success. Have a wonderful, restful, and deeply focused week.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care of yourselves, step outside for some soft fascination today, and remember to ruthlessly protect your focus.